We're now with our second guest. Reminder, this is our brand new podcast here, The Feed, and we have Karen Proud. Karen, welcome to the stage.
Thank you so much. Happy to be here.
Well, wonderful to see you. You and I have chatted before, and but not everybody here might know who you are. They might know you from a past life, but what do you do today for a living?
So I am the first ever Canadian president and adjudicator of the Office of the Grocery Sector Code of Conduct.
All right, fantastic. Well, let's talk about your background to get there. Just briefly, you've both got advocacy roles, but you also have some enforcement work. So you've got a perfect mix of those two things as you perceive the role, yeah?
Yeah, I mean, whoever thought that my winding career would have led to this? But yeah, I started in government, actually, in enforcement roles on First Nation reserves, enforcing public health laws. So that was a challenge in and of itself, but I think taught me a lot about negotiation and how to work with folks on policy and regulatory. I spent a decade in Health Canada developing regulation and legislation, and then I left the government and I went into the private sector.
Right.
Worked for both Retail Council of Canada, Food Health, and
we have the president
products.
of Retail Council of Canada right here, Deanne Brisebois, in the audience.
We do, an icon,
icon.
for sure.
So let's talk about the first 100 days. You're here. You and I have spoken before on a different podcast, so you clearly have a communication objective. You started, what was it, March, right?
March 17th, St. Patrick's Day.
March 17th, St. Patrick's Day. So talk about your first 100 days and start to launch a website and build a team. Talk about the first 100 days, what your objectives and goals are.
Sure. I mean, we're sort of halfway into the first 100 days. I started on the 17th of March, and there was nothing that existed in the office at the time. So, at the start, it was just ordering my computer and getting a phone number and an email address. And so that was very exciting. We've built the team. There's
Right.
2.5 of us, and that's the team that's going to be probably in place for the next little while. Now it's really moving into making sure the office is fully operational. And so within that first 100 days, that really is the goal. The next big thing that we're working on is getting our new website up and running, the portal where people are going to be able to interact with the office, raise issues that they're having. That's going to be huge, and we're hoping to launch that next month.
How did you know, when you say you got 2.5 people, I mean, you've probably got some guidelines around how big the organization should be, but do you have expectations about how much work there is? Like, it's kind of a little bit of you've got some global learnings, right? There are other codes in different countries. What are you learning from them, and is that kind of guiding some of your first steps?
So we're certainly taking lessons learned from some of the other countries who have implemented. Is 2.5 people enough? How busy are we going to be? I don't know. One of the issues they had in the UK from the first adjudicator was nobody was calling the office. Nobody was talking to them. And so they were sort of sitting around, twiddling their thumbs, waiting for people to engage. I think there was a bit of a concern about confidentiality and how this office was going to work.
That probably drove your communication strategy early in, right? That you described. Let's make sure everybody knows we're here and we're open to taking the feedback and insights.
Absolutely. I mean, my first 100 days has been about doing things like this. I have a policy where I am not saying no to any invitation. If I can get out there and talk about the office, talk about the code, explain what it is that we're doing, that we're out here to hear from people, that we want to talk to people, that's really key in just getting everyone aligned to the code, understanding that it's out there, when's it going to start. That's been a real focus, and then we'll see what happens when we open the portal and the floodgates. Are we going to get 1,000 or people sitting there right now? Oh, you know what? I've got this complaint and that complaint. Or is it going to trickle in? And are we going to have to do more to try and get people engaged in the code? Time will tell.
Well, speaking of time, let's talk about the implementation time. So I think you recently announced a go date, so to speak, of January 2026. Do I have that right?
Yeah, so
That seemed later than what we first talked about. So talk about your timeline.
Sure. So, and then that's the biggest question I get when I go and talk to people is, when is this starting? And so the code itself has a date of June 1st that everyone is supposed to be in compliance with the code.
June 1st, 2025.
2025.
Okay.
Now that date was created when I think there was an expectation that the office would have been set up in 2024.
I
So
see.
the office is just set up.
I see.
We're not ready for June 1st as the office, nor are we ready, I think, within the stakeholder community. There's a lot of people getting ready for implementation. So the approach that we're taking is really one similar to what government would do if it brings in a new policy or regulation, is we're going to roll this out, starting with education, starting with raising awareness, with the expectation that people are changing their systems and processes, taking training, getting ready for code implementation. And we're going to do that for the next 6 months. Come January 1st, that's when we will be taking in formal issues through our dispute resolution mechanism. And so,
And how much of this structure is given to you on the written page? It's been years of, writing down what the code is, and how much flexibility or interpretation, I would say, do you perceive as you do you have firm guidelines, or are those guidelines now you should do these things in the best practice? What's the language like?
so we have the code. That's our starting point. The code is written. The code was agreed to. We are not touching the language of the code. I am
Don't
not
wanna reopen
rewriting the
that
code.
negotiation.
No, that was a decade in the making getting this code done.
Congratulations to everybody who negotiated that. by the way.
Absolutely. Really impressive that everyone could come
Right.
together and agree on a code. So that's really the only piece we have completed right now. And that's why it's also taking us some time to roll this out. So when it comes to things like dispute resolution, we don't have the details of what that's going to look like. And that's why we're not activating dispute resolution until we have a handle on those details, until we can get stakeholders aligned to how we're going to manage disputes, how we're going to deal with issues that come in. So that's a big piece we're working on. The other piece, as you mentioned,
And that's not in the code.
it's not in it's in the code that there will be a dispute resolution mechanism.
Okay.
But we don't have the details of it yet. The other thing you mentioned is guidance. And this is something that I hear a lot, especially from the smaller suppliers, the smaller independent grocers, is, the code is one thing, but how does it actually apply in real life?
How do I get, because you mentioned earlier, people are or need to get ready for it or set up systems or processes. Of course, with very large companies, they need a process. They might have a team dedicated to initiating or responding. Like, what are you hearing when you're out at these events in terms of how people are going to kind of activate the code, so to speak?
Well, so there are various levels of readiness within the sector. Some people are ready and raring to go. They've got the training, they've got the manuals in place they've created, they've got compliance officers sitting in place. I would say that's a small percentage of the total industry that is just ready for this code to happen. Others are kind of in that state of, we're getting prepared, we're not sure quite yet. We're waiting to see what comes out of the office in terms of guidance on the code, in terms of things like the dispute resolution. And still others have heard of the code, but that's about it. And that's where this first 6 months is really about getting everybody to the level they need to be, so that we can start working with the code, and the code can be a real tool in the business to business dealings.
Do you see an ecosystem evolving? I guess it's a question, what happened in the other countries, of expert consultants, because not, as you said, small brands, whether they want to engage in the code or not, will not have the capacity to have people who are dedicated to these things, as they do not have the capacity for many dedicated roles. Do you see an ecosystem building itself around you? Is that what happen in other countries?
So, there are people that are providing training now, those that have had experience in the UK with the UK code. And of course, the Canadian code is different, but we're modeled on the UK. I suspect more of that is going to come to light. But one of the functions of the office, one of the things that is important for us, is to play that role in education and bringing those materials so that people know, number one, it's coming from the office, it's legitimate. We believe in what we put out, and it's not a third party. That said, I think a lot of third parties are going to be valuable in helping to bring folks along and assist them. And we'll have to have a look at that from an office
Are
perspective.
you going to authenticate them, or in some way certify? Certify might be too strong a word.
It may be a bit strong, but I think similar to what they do in the UK, they've got a list of suppliers,
Approved suppliers?
that they've looked at to
Okay.
say these guys are legitimate. They're able to provide the training without going through all of the materials, but we certainly want to be able to provide the tools and the resources, whether it comes from us, whether it's third party, where if people come to the office, they can see what resources exist to them in order to, manage through this transition period.
So you've been talking to a lot of people about a lot of things. Is there any one or two misperceptions that have come up about the Grocery Code of Conduct that you'd wanted to, that have come up more than once? I guess it's the basis for your FAQ section of the website, but I guess it's what it is and what it is not. Talk about that for a bit.
The biggest misperception, and this was even before the code was signed off, was that the code was going to address food inflation. And it's just not. It's not meant to do that. The purpose is not for that. The purpose is more around those business to business dealings, but that is still some of the dialogue that we hear in the media, that we hear especially from those outside of the industry, is that somehow the code is going to deal with the price of food. It's not. The other concern I think people have, or misperception, is that somehow the office is going to intervene in those negotiations between supplier and retailer when it comes to pricing. We are not touching that, and we have no business in that arena. And I think it's those sorts of misconceptions that we need to, get our information about. Right. What exactly is that code, how it's going to help businesses build a relationship together, but not interfere with the good competitive business we have in this country.
So last question. Let me take you to January 26. You're January 26. What's the process look like? You open the portal and you have a bell in the office. We got our first, we got our first client or our first. What does that look like? You get a submission. What then happens?
So there's sort of two pathways. Our portal will be open this coming June, and this is just a way for people to raise issues, systemic issues they're seeing within the marketplace. We're not going to address one-on-one issues where every complaint that comes in, we're going to take it up and go and follow up with whether it's a supplier or a retailer. It's just informing the office of what's going on, and if there's things systemic that we feel are problematic, where we think that there's code violations or a misinterpretation, we will follow up with people. Come January 1st, there is going to be a more formal mechanism. If businesses can't come to an agreement and feel that there's a code violation, they will be able to come to the office and raise it more formally, which there'll be a process. We're still working on that, but there'll be a process which ends in, if it can't be resolved, in some sort of an adjudication by the office. My hope is come January 1st, nothing happens with that. And that's the expectation. It's really the aim of the code is to sort of set some ground rules about how businesses work together, encourage that those businesses do in fact have the conversations. If there's disputes, settle it internally. And my hope is that formal process that we're working really hard on right now never get activated. And that's similar to how they experienced it in the UK. I think over the first 5 years, there were sort of 3 formal investigations. That's
because everyone else was generally following the roadmap, so to speak.
Yeah.
And you started a website, so people go to where to go learn more as it evolves?
So we've got a website out there right now, canadacode.org.
Canadacode.org.
But we're revamping that website. It was a very basic site that was created just for sort of code discussions. We're relaunching that, a new website, new information, new portal, should be launched mid to end of July. We're working really hard on it, and that's going to be a great source of information.
A great summer project for you. Well, Karen, thanks so much for joining me here on The Feed. It's a real treat to have you on our inaugural few episodes, and I wish you continued success and an interesting journey for us all.
Thanks so much. Really appreciate it.
All right, thanks.
Thank you.